Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Chatting Category Romance. This is a channel that's a collaboration between myself and Sarah at the Bookish Knitter. We are both avid readers. We are both big fans of the romance genre, and we both really like the category romances, specifically of, let's say, Harlequin romance, which is going to be a synonymous association that if you don't know much about romances or if you're on the periphery of the genre, when you think category romances, you're really going to think your grandmother's romance. You're going to think Harlequin romance, Harlequin Presents, Mills and Boon. They are typically short, a very constricted and almost uniform page count, and they have certain plot or format restrictions depending on what kind of a category it is. And judged by that alone, lots of readers, including lots of romance readers, look at category romances and think, oh, well, that's the bottom of the barrel. That's basically content free. When that's not true, that's not true with any kind of writing. You take any kind of writing, and whether or not the book in question in that kind of writing is worth your time will be entirely dictated by the talent of the writer. It won't matter about the restrictions. The comparison that I always make when people say that about things like category romance, or for instance, let's say a Star Trek novel or something like that. When people say, oh, well, it's too restrictive to be good, I always want to bring up the Petrarchan sonnet, which has very definite, very strict rules, and you're not writing a Petrarchan sonnet if you go outside those rules. No one says that brilliance can't be expressed that way. So we decided, Sarah and I, to make this channel where we solely celebrate category romances, although I imagine from time to time as we gain momentum, which right now we have none, I imagine from time to time we will talk about just general romances as well. But I wanted to put up videos. We're still feeling our way with this channel. We're still not 100% sure of what we want to do. We're very, very grateful, both Sarah and myself, we're very grateful that all of you subscribed. That's wonderful. It's wonderful not to be talking at the beginning of a channel to an empty house. But we're not 100% sure what we're going to do. I imagine there'll be some Zoom chats where we natter, where we talk to each other. But in addition to that, we're reading category romances every month, and I am. And I thought I might as well talk about the category romances that I'm reading every month. So I'm going to be doing that in addition. Try not to make these videos the signature 40-minute length of my own channel. But so this video is going to be a book review of a current category romance. And unfortunately, for these little book reviews, I have to start with a bit of a dud. It's the way it goes. I picked, once we decided we were going to do this channel, I mean, I got a healthy number of category romances anyway that I would just buy and read on my own. But once we decided we were going to do this channel, I made a pick. I picked 4 books, 4 different category romances. Tried to spread it out a little. Tried not to go specifically to the category romances that I probably wouldn't be interested in. Although you never know. And I don't intend to restrict myself. I intend to explore the whole realm. And the first one that I got all 4 of my picks, and the first one that I read was not particularly good. It's this. It's Reclaimed by His $1 Billion Ring by Julia James from the Harlequin Presents line. There you have what I'm sure are meant to be Greek columns in the background and the desiccated, dry landscape of Greece. This is very much supposed to be set against the backdrop of contemporary Greece. You won't feel that way at all. You won't feel like you're anywhere other than on a Hollywood stage lot. But when I was looking at this book and originally considering it, I realized that I do have previous experience with this author. This author wrote a book called Cinderella in the Boss's Palazzo. That kind of describe the plot of the book as the title of the book is a staple of some kinds of category romances. I don't think it should be. I think it just adds to the hokey, rinky-dink, mom keeps it in her purse style nature of these things that Harlequin ought to be working against. No book is just a summary of its plot, or at least none should be. but this is a story of 2 people whose eyes met across a crowded room, straight out of the South Pacific. Their eyes met across a crowded room years ago. There's Calanthe Petronakos, and the man that she sees is Nikos Kavadis, and he's gorgeous. And they have an instant connection. And they take their instant connection straight to the bedroom and scorch the sheets. But then he sort of dumps her, or at least he seems to. They sort of part ways, and years pass. And they both still stay super sexy. But years and years later, their eyes meet across a crowded room again. And there's a gimmick involved this time. There's a sort of a fake courtship that they have to undergo for Calanthe's purposes. She has need of a fake courtship. And any of you who've read any romances will know that fake courtships that turn real are time-honored gimmick of the whole genre, and usually can lead to wonderful, wonderful plot developments, really, really wonderful character developments, because usually the two characters involved go into the fake romance not thinking it can become real. So you get to watch as the tumblers change around, and that doesn't happen in this case because Calanthe has always had the hots for Nikos, and she still does, even in the middle of their allegedly fake relationship. When you're watching it as a reader, you're thinking, okay, well, that sort of lets the air out of the tire, doesn't it? I mean, unless he's taken up monastic vows, we do know how this is going to go. And he, spoiler, has not taken up monastic vows. And at the beginning of this book, when it was starting, I thought, okay, well, there's a little bit of snap here that I don't remember from Cinderella in the boss's palazzo. There's a little bit of snap here that I kind of like. There's a little exchange right at the beginning of the book about Greek antiquities, of all things, where he says to her, I was curious, he informed her in the same laconic fashion with which he asked the original question. That is, after all, my country's history you're digging up, he went on, and now his voice was less laconic, not your own. Calanthe felt the pointedness of his remark, and her chin lifted. Perhaps your country, she said, echoing his tone deliberately, might show that it values its history more by banning the building of hotels all over it. That's pretty good, and that's also not reconcilable. Not easily. That's an ongoing question in archaeology and urban planning. So I briefly got my hopes up. That's right at the beginning of the book. I briefly got my hopes up and thought, all right, well, if these two have a spark between them, if they're two individual people whose personalities have really driven them apart, not just that Nikos dumped her after one night getting it on in the Parthenon, however you would put it. If that's true, then there might be hope here, especially since years have passed since they originally saw each other. So if anything, they'll have grown into more complicated individual people. That is the kind of story, that is the kind of development that a meet after a long time, second chance, even fake romance category is supposed to summon. That's the human element that is supposed to be driving this kind of a romance gimmick. Is that we had an instant chemistry once upon a time, but is chemistry fleeting? Or was there something real there? And I shouldn't have got my hopes up. Well, I did. You're always supposed to get your hopes up because, right, that's what reading is all about. You get your hopes up, and then they hope that you won't be let down. I was let down by this book, which takes a long, long time to do anything, and apparently repeatedly makes non-ironic references to the hoi polloi of Athenian society. Not in the age of Pericles, but now, in 2023, the very upper crust of Athenian society. Okay, it was around the middle of this book, right around this is what, 200 pages long? Yeah, thereabouts. It was right around the 100-page mark of this book that I actually started to wonder if the author has ever set foot in Greece, much less associated with anybody who has any kind of money in Athens. I'm starting to think that maybe she hasn't done that, and that maybe she just chose a location on a spinning wheel or something like that. But if my hopes were up at the beginning, they were dashed pretty early on, because this is mainly just, the book is mainly just hyperventilating and longing looks and lazy language. And if you come to this channel, you're probably not a reading snob, but if you are a reading snob who just happened to wander in here by accident, you might be saying right now, well, what'd you expect? It's a romance novel. No, no. Not only does that not fly, but that's not going to fly on this channel. Not at all. Both Sarah and I have, well, what's the word? Standards. and I am perfectly okay adopting the standards of any subgenre of any kind of writing. If you're writing, really blood and guts military history, and I know that's what you're writing and that's the audience you're going for, I'm going to adopt those standards in order to judge you by those standards. Same thing with, I don't know, slangy, funny fantasy stuff with orcs serving drinks behind bars and whatnot. I'm not going to go to that and say, well, this doesn't seem right according to Kantian logic. I said I'm going to judge the book on what you're doing. And the only way to do that is by judging it against examples of what you're doing that were done well. And I have seen this book done much, much better than this. It rapidly descends into what a friend of mine used to refer to as romance ease, where it's just on autopilot. It's not trying to evoke passionate or even amorous responses in its reader. Instead, it's just assuming those and using that language. I have a brief passage here. I won't torment you with too much of this. Her gaze, still as impassive as she could make it. They're always doing this all throughout the book. This is 200 pages later than the thing that I read you the first time. They're constantly trying to act so cool. You don't impress me. Come on. If secondary characters in the novel by page 70 can routinely comment on the obvious fact that the two of you are revving each other's motors, then what's the point of all this? Of course, we know the point, right? Because I believe, at least I know the point, because I believe that all romance novels generate from one particular source. One particular source. And that source is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And in Pride and Prejudice, to use movie language, the male and female love interests feign disinterest. So that's absolutely imprinted like a chick out of an egg. It's absolutely imprinted on the genre. But yeah, she's still trying to pretend that he doesn't raise her souffle. She's still trying to do that. In case you're wondering, it's 100 pages later. She's still trying to do that. Her gaze, still impassive as she could make it, rested on him as they stood in the sitting room of the little villa. His presence was making itself felt on her consciousness, her senses. He was casually dressed in chinos and an open-neck shirt, deck shoes, and turned-back cuffs. Casual and devastating. Irresistible. And just in case you weren't paying attention, that's in italics. That is romance ease. That is when an author is being lazy enough so that they're just assuming that you are, oh my God, I'm swept away. They're very much not thinking that it's their job to sweep you away. This is a job to get you in what BookTube calls the feels. And unfortunately, that is this book. Unfortunately, the first little review that I'm doing for this channel is a bit of a flop. They won't all be. I know this for a fact because one of the 4 authors that I picked because she doesn't write flops. And maybe this author doesn't write flops. But I wasn't all that impressed by Cinderella in the Boss's Palazzo, and it also completely failed to convey any accurate sense of its setting, which I like in a romance novel. If you're going to do that, if you're going to go into the bother of, setting a romance novel in and around the Alhambra Palace or in Liverpool, no one's ever done that, but except in science fiction. But maybe Liverpool. I would want you to, do a little research in order to make me feel like that's where the thing is set, and Cinderella in the Boss's Palazzo did not do that, and this thing doesn't do that either. You could swap the stories in either place for either location without missing a beat. My first review for chatting categories is, but those are the risks you take, right? And also, if I want to defend myself just a little here, and I think Sarah would probably back me up here, is that that's you all come to this channel for us, and you already know that we don't have just a rubber stamp of approval on everything we read. The book has to do the work, and this does not. So my first review for this channel is a bit of a mixed bag. Actually, actually, to be fair to you, but not necessarily to this author, it's not a mixed bag at all. They're really, once you realize that that is what the author is doing, it never really changes. Sparks, moments here and there happen throughout the book, but you know pretty early on, I stuck with it because I don't usually DNF books, but you know pretty early on that this is not going to do anything energetic or real. And unfortunately, that ended up being the case. So, but we'll try again next time. I will do individual review videos of every one of the category romances that I read during the month. I'm hoping that Sarah will too, and maybe we'll have a little chat at the end of every month, which is still a couple of weeks away here in April. So, but anyway, we're still working it out. I just wanted to put this up there now. Sarah assures me that she has given me enough information to log into this channel and upload this video. And whether or not you see it will be the determining factor of whether or not I am, in fact, too old to get that. She's very good at simplifying things for nonagenarians. But we'll see how good she is. Anyway, whether it works this time or not, we'll certainly make it work. And I will be back for another video. Thank you all.